Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
I know a number of you are familiar with the 12 days of Christmas. Today we want to look at those 12 defining moments in CARICOM for the year 2022. And joining us as we take a look back and look through the amazing work done in this one year, 2022 alone, is Barbados Ambassador to CARICOM, His Excellency David Comissiong. Good morning to you, Ambassador.
Good morning, Pearson. And
Two
Happy
things.
New Year.
I was coming to say that to you. Happy Christmas and Happy New Year, both of them to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Yes, a nice, restful season for me.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that indeed, but the work continues. But let's look back at the amazing work that has already been done in the last year alone. And I want to look at the 12, what we think, 12 defining moments of CARICOM, one for every month. Let's start with number one. You know, there was the adoption of the protocol for enhanced cooperation to facilitate implementation and a whole lot more. So talk to me a little bit about that and its significance for CARICOM as a signal moment.
Well, we often speak about the implementation deficit in CARICOM.
Yes.
So this is something that Barbados in particular gave a lot of thought to. And we pushed this idea that we could agree to amend the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, because the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, particularly as it applies to the CSME, is based on the principle of unanimity. Every member state has to agree before something goes forward. So we said, listen, let that be the general principle. But if we find a situation where we have unanimous agreement, but for some reason we are not implementing because some countries are not ready, then let's agree that once we get the consent of the Heads of Government Conference, that any two countries that are ready to move ahead and implement, that they can go forward, and the others can join when they are ready. So that mechanism is called the Enhanced Cooperation Mechanism, and we adopted the protocol that permits us to amend the treaty to put that in place at the Heads of Government Summit in Belize in March of last year.
Yeah, boy, that was a significant moment indeed. Another one, as it affects the people, because CARICOM is also about the people, is the reduction of the intra-Caribbean roaming rates. That has to have meant so much to so many. Yes.
Again, the whole idea of the CSME is that it must be one domestic space. So we want one domestic space, one ICT, Information Communications Technology, one domestic space. Why, if you are traveling from Barbados just next door to St. Lucia or St. Vincent, should you have to pay higher rates to use your cell phone? So we set up a CARICOM committee headed by the then Prime Minister of Grenada, Honorable Keith Mitchell, and they negotiated with the telecommunications companies, and they came to an agreement. So last year we signed the Declaration of St. George's with the telecommunications companies agreeing to reduce the roaming rates in the Caribbean region. Now, our objective really is to eliminate the roaming rates altogether, because we're saying one domestic space. It's not like we got to treat this as if we are one country. The Caribbean is one country. However, we weren't able to get to a complete elimination, but as a result of this agreement, the roaming rates have come down anywhere between 70% to 98%. So that's a great achievement.
Indeed so. The discussion now about food security, and I know that we've had many discussions about that because it's central to how we survive as a region as well. Let's talk a little bit about the advancement of the project to reduce food importation by 25%, by the year 2025.
So that's achievement number 3.
Yes, it is.
So, we have this project, we call it 25 by 25, to reduce the regional food import bill by 25% by the year 2025. It's an ongoing project, but we made substantial progress in 2022 in the sense that we have come to recognize that if we are to achieve that goal, if we are going to upgrade our regional agriculture, it is going to call for investment. It is going to call for finance. And to that end, we held two very successful agricultural finance conferences, fora last year. The first one was in May in Guyana. And the second one, the follow-up, was in August in Trinidad and Tobago. So we are finally getting those with institutions with capital and business people with capital to buy into the idea that agriculture is a good venue for their investment. Also, I would say last year, we were able to identify some 19 investment opportunities in agriculture. So we have this ministerial task force working on it, ministers of agriculture. They were able to collaborate with the Caribbean Private Sector Organization, the CARICOM Secretariat, to work out what are the 19 areas, 19 agricultural products that we need to push behind more if we are to reduce this regional food import bill. And then towards the end of the year, good news, Cuba will be joining this project. Cuba is going to become part of the ministerial task force. So we're going to bring all that Cuba has to offer in agricultural development to this project.
And those are only 3 achievements thus far, folks. So we've talked about already quite significant to the peoples of the Caribbean. Achievement number 4 now. And COP27 was held in Edinburgh, and Barbados stood center stage as well when we went on to Egypt too. Let's talk a little bit about the impact of COP27 as it relates to small island developing states and as it relates to Barbados in the Bridgetown Initiative.
Well, you know, when we've been having these conferences of the parties on climate change, we tend to always come back somewhat disappointed that the developed countries haven't done enough. But at this COP27 in Egypt, we can say that the CARICOM came away with 2 very notable successes. The first one is that we finally got the developing countries to set up a loss and damage fund that to compensate developing countries like us in the Caribbean that are on the front line of a climate crisis that we did virtually nothing to develop, but we suffered the negative consequences of it. And finally, we have this loss and damage fund going now, where we can be compensated if we are hit by a hurricane, we are hit by sargassum seaweed, etc., etc. So that was because we've been fighting for that for some 30 years. I would say the beginnings of that struggle probably go back to the UN Small Island Development States Sustainable Development Conference that was held in Barbados in 1994. So that was one. But number 2, Barbados was able to place on the international agenda the Bridgetown Initiative, which is this major foreign policy initiative that seeks to deal with the climate crisis, but also to deal with financing for development. And we had a very encouraging news at COP27. For example, President Macron of France saying that he is on board, and France is going to be supporting elements of the Bridgetown Initiative as early as the IMF and World Bank spring meetings in 2023. So, number 4, Pearson, a solid achievement.
Indeed so. So we've done 4 significant, folks. We're doing the 12 significant moments in CARICOM and the achievements made in CARICOM as well. Now, we've talked a lot also about skilled nationals being able to ply their trades everywhere, CSME, at real work here. But there were certain categories that still needed further definition and the like. So talk to me a little bit about how far we've moved in advancing that effort, the skilled program.
Yes, well, you know, it first started with 4 categories of skills, and then the categories have been increased over the years. But we had come to a kind of sticking point where the heads of government had agreed that we needed to add household domestics, agricultural workers, and private security officers to the categories. So that was agreed few years ago, but for some reason, senior officials, the officials could never agree on the definition. What is imagine that? What is an agricultural worker?
Yes.
You couldn't agree on the definition of an agricultural worker, for example. So at the Heads of Government Summit in July, the heads of government simply took it in hand. And at that summit, they worked out the three definitions that had been holding back the implementation of those three categories. So that's a major step forward. We now have those three categories sorted out, and they will be added to the categories of skilled workers who can move and work in the Caribbean. That's why we needed the enhanced cooperation mechanism, because if we had had that mechanism in place, any two countries could have come together and said, look, we agree the definitions, we are going to move ahead. But anyhow, another significant achievement that we now have those three additional categories as part of the Skills National Program.
Yeah. That's great news for a number of people across the region indeed. Achievement number 6 we've got to now, which is the move towards having that sub-governmental subcommittee on industrial development. And when we think of the Caribbean, we don't think industrial development, we think sugar cane and the like. But talk to me a little bit about how significant that particular move is.
Well, again, this was an insight of Prime Minister Motley, because she said to the heads of government conference, look, I mean, we're in the 21st century. How is it that we have prime ministerial subcommittees and lead prime ministers for tourism, for agriculture, for so many areas, but industry, which is so critical if you're going to become a developed area, we have never set up a lead prime minister on industrial policy or prime ministerial subcommittee. So she recognized that this was a real gap in our CARICOM structure, and the heads of government conference agreed with her. And so at the conference in Belize in March, it was agreed that the president of Suriname will take on lead responsibility for developing industrial development policy for CARICOM. And so that is an achievement of 2022. He is on his way. His committee has already started to work, and they've already begun to put together a draft policy for industrial development within our region.
Now we wait to see the benefits that flow therefrom. Achievement number 7, those results coming out of the Summit of the Americas, with that establishment of the USA CARICOM Committee on Finance, Food Security and Energy Security as well. Let's talk about that achievement.
Yes, well, the Summit of the Americas that was held in Los Angeles was somewhat controversial.
Yes,
because Cuba and Venezuela had not been invited. At one point, CARICOM was not going to go, but eventually we relented and said, look, what's going to be discussed at this summit is too important for us not to be there. So we went and we registered a protest against the exclusion of Cuba and Venezuela. But something very positive did come out of the summit, in that first of all, the CARICOM leaders insisted that they had to meet with the President of the United States himself, not the Vice President, with the President. They did have that meeting. And out of the summit came the decision to set up 3 joint USA CARICOM committees. One on finance, one on food security, and one on energy security. The one on finance, the CARICOM side of it, is being led by Barbados, and Prime Minister Motley has appointed Professor Avinash Prasad to be the chair of the Barbados side of that committee. The one on energy, Minister Stuart Young from Trinidad and Tobago, and the one on food security, a very high official in Guyana's, Mr. Prasad, in Guyana's Ministry of Agriculture. So this is very important, because if we can collaborate with the United States on these 3 critical areas, and remember, let's look at finance. Remember last year, Prime Minister Motley actually went before the U.S. Congress.
Yes.
At the invitation of Congresswoman Maxine Waters, the chair of the Finance Committee, to explain to them how much damage is being done in our region by these financial regulations that they have imposed on us pertaining to terrorism and money laundering, and the fact that it is running away banks from the Caribbean and correspondent banks from having relations with the Caribbean. So to have these three joint committees, U.S. CARICOM committees in place, it gives us the space now to collaborate with the United States of America on these three thorny areas.
Speaking of finance, that big hosting of the Africa Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum in Barbados alone, and we're already seeing fruit flow from that. That, for a lot of us in the Caribbean, really was a signal moment. The reaching across the seas to Africa and working together collaboratively.
Yes, this is definitely one of the great achievements of 2022. The Africa CARICOM Trade and Investment Forum, ACTIF, that was held in Barbados between the 1st and the 3rd of September. And just a few days ago, we heard the announcement of one of the fruits of that conference, which is that the African Export-Import Bank has approved a credit facility of $1.5 billion to be devoted towards developing trade and investment exclusively between the Caribbean and Africa. And so, yes, we have always known that going forward in this 21st century, Africa is going to be very, very important to us. And so to have that conference and to have a partner like the African Export-Import Bank, which by Caribbean standards is really a giant multi-billion-dollar financial institution, to have a partner like that to help finance the things that we know need to be done, is really a tremendous step forward. So yes, one of the great achievements of 2022, and we expect that achievement is going to deliver so much more in the months ahead. In fact, this year we're going to have a follow-up conference, a follow-up forum. Again, we're going to come back to the CARICOM region again before we go to Africa. So we're going to consolidate the gains made in 2022 in 2023.
Fantastic. That was achievement 8. Now to achievement number 9. Cuba, Haiti, those parts of the region, but we want to look at Haiti in particular and the crisis there. And there's some who are going to sit and say, but we've been talking about Haiti for Thy Kingdom Come. Can we see any movement at all? What do you say as an achievement for CARICOM?
See, from my point of view, and this is something from the time I became CARICOM ambassador in 2018, I really have been pushing the issue of Haiti within the councils of CARICOM. And Barbados, been pushing because, Barbados, we have tried on several occasions. We wanted to go to Haiti, to send an official Barbadian team into Haiti over the last 3 years or so, but because of the instability, because we recognize that Haiti has a lot to offer. This is a CARICOM country of 11 million people. So there's a lot to offer, but we need to get Haiti stable. So for me, I have been able to witness over the last 4 years, CARICOM gradually coming to a sense that Haiti's problems are our responsibility, and we can't leave it. We can't leave it to the United States or to Canada or to France or the OAS or the UN. No, this is our member state, and we have to be very directly involved in trying to help it solve its problems. So after several years of building towards this, CARICOM now has an initiative. We have written to all of the important sectors of Haitian society, and we have said to them, look, will you be willing to accept our invitation to come to either the Bahamas or Jamaica to meet with us, so that we could facilitate you to discuss an agreement on a way forward for Haiti that CARICOM can get behind, and then we can get the international community to join the consensus, and we can really go forward and solve Haiti's problems in 2023. So this CARICOM initiative really is coming to a head in this month of January, or maybe February by the latest. So that is why I deem that to be an achievement. I think the evolution of CARICOM policy and CARICOM's effort on Haiti is an achievement for CARICOM.
I agree with you completely. Now to achievement number 10. You know, in 1972, the leaders of the Big Three stood up, had some stiff backbone against the United States embargo against Cuba. And out of it came this relationship between CARICOM and Cuba. And so we marked the 50th anniversary in 2022. And so much more happened then as well. Let's talk about that as a defining moment for CARICOM.
Yes, we had the 50th anniversary summit, heads of government summit, right here in Barbados on the 6th of December. So that in itself, having the summit, being able to commemorate 50 years of a very, very important and mutually beneficial relationship, that in itself was significant. But out of the summit has come renewed initiatives and ideas about collaboration between CARICOM and Cuba. We in Barbados also took the opportunity to have a Barbados-Cuba bilateral meeting, and that too produced some very exciting ideas. I mean, from artistic and cultural exchanges over the next 5 years to the tune of $1 million a year, to Barbados accessing Cuba's new cutting-edge diabetes medications and treatments, and a whole host of things. For me, one of the great achievements came at the CARICOM-Cuba summit when the heads of government of CARICOM and Cuba agreed to designate the 6th of October CARICOM-Cuba Day Against Terrorism. And of course, the 6th of October is the day in 1976 on which that terrible Cubana terrorist tragedy took place right here in Barbados. So to dignify that day by designating it CARICOM-Cuba Day Against Terrorism, a day on which our region will make a statement every year will make a statement to the world about the evils of terrorism and the need to stamp it out. That for me was a great achievement.
Fantastic work indeed. Now to achievement number 11, the British Virgin Islands, and we know of the political upheavals that happened there in 2022. And though they're not necessarily a member of CARICOM and they're British territories, yet still CARICOM has been able to contribute successfully to the quelling almost, but setting a framework in place. Talk to me about what CARICOM has done and why is that an achievement?
Well, first of all, the British Virgin Islands may not be a full member of CARICOM, but they are an associate member. So CARICOM, we have two categories of membership: full members, which tend to be independent countries, with the exception of Montserrat. Montserrat is a bit of an exception.
Right.
But then we have a category of associate members, which tend to be non-independent countries. So British Virgin Islands, Bermuda, Turks and Caicos, Anguilla, Cayman Islands, they're all associate members. And during 2022, we got this threat, this threat from the British government that they were going to remove whatever self-government, internal domestic self-government, the British Virgin Islands had managed to achieve for themselves over the years. The British government was threatening to take away that, to suspend their domestic parliamentary institutions and impose full colonial rule from London. And we recognize that this would be, if this happened, this would be an extremely negative and backward development, because we must move forward into greater independence and sovereignty in our region, not backwards towards colonialism. And we recognize that we had a duty to our associate member. If associate membership is to mean anything, then when an associate member has a problem or is facing a threat, the community has to step forward and defend it. And that's what we did. And so we made our contribution to saying to the British government, no, we disapprove of this. This would be a backward step. And CARICOM is definitely saying to you, this must not happen. And thus far, the British government has listened, and the self-governing institutions remain alive and well in our associate member states. So for me, I know these dozen achievements are David's, it's my choice, but for me, the issue of decolonization and creating a totally independent Caribbean community is very critical. So this has to be an achievement.
And speaking of that, then, a totally independent Caribbean development space, really, reparations. So we're down to achievement number 12. And, the CARICOM reparations campaign continues. And one of the successes came from the Netherlands, as a matter of fact. Let's talk about that, unless people have forgotten.
Yes, well, right towards the end of the year, on the 19th of December,
yes,
the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mr. Mark Rutte, on behalf of the government of the Netherlands, issued an official apology for the role of the government of the Netherlands in the whole history of African enslavement. And this is a significant CARICOM achievement because from way back in 2013, CARICOM had launched the reparations campaign. CARICOM created this 10-point plan on reparations, 10 demands. Demand number 1 was that the European powers must issue official apologies for their role in slavery. And an official apology is important. It's not, you're not just talking about, a normal apology between, two human beings. An official state apology has a certain resonance in international law. That is, it is tantamount to a formal admission of liability. The next step after the official apology is really looking at compensation.
Yes.
So in 2016, CARICOM had in fact written to the said Prime Minister Mark Rutte. He was Prime Minister in 2016, calling on his government to acknowledge that they owed reparations and to come to the negotiating table. Back then, he responded in a very non-committal way. So you can actually see the distance that he and the Netherlands government has moved between 2016, their response in 2016, and issuing this official governmental apology in December of 2022. So that tells you that the CARICOM reparations campaign is, in fact, making progress. So that has to be seen as a CARICOM achievement in 2022, and it augurs well for the future unfolding of our reparations campaign.
And that concludes our countdown today, ladies and gentlemen. Just kidding you. The 12 defining moments in CARICOM for 2022. When you look at all of it in its totality, what do you feel about the movement of CARICOM? Because there's a significant work done already in those 12 months.
Oh, yes. 2022, we were just coming out of the COVID pandemic. In fact, the Heads of Government Conference in early March in 2022 was the first physical Heads of Government Conference since the February 2020 Barbados Conference. After that Barbados Conference, COVID really took hold, and we had to go to virtual meetings. So 2022 was a very important year in terms of coming out of COVID, and I think it was a year of very great achievement. And if I had to single out one achievement of the 12, that I think it is great. Well, let me say two. I can't. But you see, that Bridgetown initiative,
Yes.
that Bridgetown initiative, which has come out, not just of Barbados, has come out of the Caribbean and is actually proposing three solutions to three of the fundamental problems facing the entire world community: the climate crisis, the crisis of development, financing, a removal of hunger, proper education for people all over the world, healthcare systems, and also that is tackling the burgeoning debt crisis that is threatening the entire world. I think that is such a significant development.
Mm-hmm.
All Barbadian and Caribbean people need to come on board. We need to know about our Bridgetown initiative. We need to support it. We need to feel very proud about it, and we need to help it to ride to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we can achieve even half of that Bridgetown initiative, we would have made a tremendous contribution towards securing the welfare of humanity. And secondly, the active African Caribbean Trade
Yes.
and Investment Forum, and that developing relationship not just between the Caribbean and Africa, CARICOM and the African Union, but with significant African institutions like the African Export and Import Bank. So those two achievements
Mm-hmm.
are not only achievements for the year 2022, but those are achievements that promise much for our Caribbean region going into the future.
Indeed. You know, our viewers have been paying such close attention. If my production crew can break the comment that shared earlier while you were speaking, I want you to see it for yourself. Can we do that, guys? Can we share what one of our commenters says? She says, "Thanks, Ambassador, for sharing this information with us. Many of us would not have known of it otherwise. Thank you." And so that's just one comment of so many who are saying to you this morning, thank you. Because I don't know if you hear it often enough, but thank you for the work you do on behalf of this island in CARICOM and advancing and educating us, because we sit on the sidelines and sometimes we're not paying that close attention. But when we talk with you, we hear it broken down in simple language that we all get and that we all understand, and we want to continue to support you, Ambassador Comissiong. All the best for 2023, and we look forward to the great fruits of your labor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pearson, and thanks to all of the viewers, who continue to tune in and support this weekly segment of conversations on CARICOM. CARICOM is our thing.
Yes.
And we must all be part of it, and that's why it's so important that we share the information.
Indeed.
Wishing everyone, all viewers, a wonderful 2023.
They all scream back at you, thank you. Back at you as well. Thank you, Ambassador, indeed. Ambassador David Comissiong, Barbados Ambassador to CARICOM, giving us those 12 defining moments of achievements in CARICOM. We know the 12 days, and but now we know the 12 defining and achievements in CARICOM for the year 2022.
Morning, morning, morning.